You are listening to the Manifested Sis podcast, a safe space for women of color to explore all things manifesting, wellness, self-care, and personal development. You are always manifesting, and now you can do it intentionally and consciously to create the life of your dreams. Each episode gives you actionable tips and strategies from the spiritual to the practical that will help you get from where you are to exactly where you want to be with grace and ease. Thanks for tuning in. Here's your host, intuitive life coach, Danny Faust.
Thank you guys so much for coming back to the Manifested Sis podcast. I am here today with Ahsaki Kai, and girls, you are going to love this woman. Ahsaki is a hypnotherapist, a certified spiritual counselor, an intuitive coach. She's clairaudient, clairsentient, clairvoyant, claircognizant, a medium, a channel, and empathic child. She's passionate about using her gifts and talents to help her clients overcome obstacles through psychic therapy, spiritual counseling, hypnotherapy, and teaching them to connect with their intuition. Many of her clients are million-dollar coaches, shaman, spiritual teachers, leaders, and light workers. And one of them is your girl, Danny, from the Manifested Sis podcast. Yes, Ahsaki is one of my teachers. I love her to bits, and you will too. Ahsaki, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, that last part was the most important, everyone, that I taught Danny, because I'm waiting for the moment where I get to be on a stage, talking about you on a stage and going, yeah, I know her way back. Yeah, I'm looking very forward to those moments. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for the intro.
Thanks for being here. I'm really excited. I want to dive into all that Claire goodness and spiritual intuition stuff, but I have to ask you first, the question I ask everybody first on this podcast. What does manifesting mean to you?
Manifesting to me is what my soul speaks to the universe. I think for a lot of us, we think it's whatever we put on the board, the car, the house, the blah, 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 blah. It's cool, it's shiny, it's pretty, it's colorful. But that's not usually what our soul is actually looking for. In my experience, and I've learned this through working with people, but also through my own life experience, your soul is always the guiding force, whether you want it to be or not. It just is. So what you're manifesting is often, almost always in alignment with what your soul truly is looking for, whether that's experiences, lessons, money, whatever it may be, however it shows up. Children, I always think children are supposed to be our big teachers. So all of those things show up when our soul is calling for them because they're preparing us for something.
So we don't.
I know that was a really woo-woo answer.
We love the woo-woo here on Manifested Sis. So it's like what our head thinks we want, what we write down in our journal is what we think we want, but our soul is really guiding us to what we're supposed to manifest. I like that. That's it. I like that.
That's it.
Okay, so I read a little bit of your amazing bio, but before we get into this whole intuition thing, I want you to tell everybody about your journey. How did you get where you are now?
All right. I'm going to try to be succinct because, I am the queen of veering off and talking for a while. No. So I probably started this process around age 4. I can't tell you I've ever known what to call it when I was a kid, or, I knew right out the gate the crows followed me, but the crows actually followed me all the time from about age 4 to like 20. Everywhere I went, there was a massive flock of crows where I grew up, and they used to follow me from city to city. When I went to college in the neighboring town, there they were. Psychic senses showed up for me really, really early. I was into shamanism and astrology, which is my first love, when I was 11. From there, I went to tarot cards and mahjong cards and all kinds of things. I've always had my hand in this, and I think it took me being a professional on this journey and then teaching to really realize you've been doing this your whole life, kid. Like, this has always been in the background or the foreground. Organized religion has never really worked for me. Not that it does not work with this process. It does. And I think this has always just been the way I know how to get to source. And later on in life, I'll say early 20s, I was assaulted. It definitely was the beginning of a different kind of awakening for me. Just going through the process of, like therapy and examining the self and the psychic hits that I was getting in my dreams about what happened about things moving forward, even other events, it was very obvious that something was already happening, but I kind of pushed it away, to be honest, during my 20s. In my 30s, I started training just by accident, really, or at least so I'd like to believe. I went to a retreat. It was a spiritual counseling retreat. It was where my first certification was, but what it really was psychic training. The entire weekend, everything was just, who are your spirit guides? How do they work? Talking to them. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had, still to this day, because it was the beginning of, oh, this thing is on and I'm supposed to use it. And later I realized, oh, this thing is on and I'm supposed to use it and I'm supposed to teach it. That was some of my more spiritual aspects of what I've done. Machu Picchu, going to Brazil, to John of God, present company notwithstanding, nonetheless. But going to John of God in particular, I got massive downloads on teaching and what I was supposed to teach. And it was really centered around the very same idea, intuition, and what I want to call personal development, but really soul development. The notion of why are we really here and what are we here for? So I started teaching when I came, I think that was 2016. I started teaching when I came back within months. And the rest is all she wrote. I started teaching it online about a year and a half later. And everything now that I do is really centered more around teaching than anything else. I do lots of sessions with people. I do private coaching and things like that, but I also do teaching. And teaching probably is 75% of my life right now, my professional life anyway. Did that answer the question? I already feel like I veered.
I love that. You did veer, but only in good ways. So I love that it took a nice soul development for you to then go and now help develop all these bajillions of souls that you're helping through your teaching.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think it was you who said you can't take someone where you haven't yet been yourself. So all of your students are going where you've been. And yeah.
I'm a really big believer in that as a teacher and frankly, as a hypnotherapist. But my bailiwick, corporate speaking, was really social work. So from that arena as well, I never tend to think, especially in work of the mind, which, the mind is part of the soul, so in order to get there, you're going to go through the mind to get to the soul work. I always think in order to take people on a journey, you would have to have some semblance of where it is that you're trying to take them. Don't get me wrong. The intuition will answer many a question on a core basic level, but a psychic reading is not the same as hypnotherapy. So, I'm differentiating in that sense of how deep the work actually is. And the psychic reading is really the surface for the client. But yeah, I really, really believe very firmly that you can't take folks where you have not been, what you have not experienced, or at least witnessed, you know what I mean, or had some real direct interaction with it. That's important to being able to speak to people's spiritual journey. There's got to be somewhere that there's a segue. And 9 times out of 10, when you do what we do as practitioners, you and me both, and everybody else that we know, when you encounter someone, dollars to donuts, they're going to show up right after you finish the crisis. Like the minute you learn something, you're like, oh my God. And that happens to me all the time. I don't know about you, but
yeah, it does.
It's weird. And it's on, usually on like those first time readings, they'll all show up. And, right when I'm done with a lesson, I go, I'm having this issue. And that's the theme for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. I'm like, all right, God, I see you. I see what you did there. But that's our journey, as spiritual teachers, really, because that's what we really all are.
I have a little bit of imposter syndrome calling myself that yet. So I'm still working with other titles. Give me some time. It took me a while. I'll own it.
It took me a while. It did. And I totally understand. I think a lot of the time people want to, and the coaching model will tell you just grab it, and run with it. The spiritual process in being a spiritual teacher, it's a journey for us and the individuals that we're teaching. So it's easy to say that, but no, you got to kind of walk a certain, you got to get to a certain place before you say, I'm this. And I promise you, it hasn't been long for me using those words. That's only been in the last year and a half, probably 18 months. I'm going to say, not long at all.
You growing and whatnot.
Right? Look at me. Oh, I'm a big girl now. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, I am also a big believer that if you're not growing as a spiritual teacher, A, your students are going to exceed you, which I also think is the mark of a good spiritual teacher. And B, you're going to stay in the place that you are as far as teaching is concerned. And that gets boring fast. starting with psychic. You know, I've had groups of folks who they do ID1, they want to become a practitioner, they get out there, and in 3 months, they're giving me that look like I am bored out of my mind. I'm like, I know, because you want to keep going, because once you've seen the experience of growing someone, you want more of that. And a lot of the time you want it with the folks that you're already working with. So in order to stretch them, you have to stretch yourself. That's the challenge to what we do. That's the biggest challenge, because we don't like that part. No one does. Humans.
That's great, because energy needs to keep moving. You have to keep moving, keep growing. Otherwise, what are we doing here, all of us?
Right. That is literally the point.
Okay. So I'm glad in your intro, telling us your journey, you mentioned organized religion. Before I jump into all the specific intuition questions, I'm curious, what would you say to the woman who maybe was raised very religious and thinks that intuition may not be something she should be tapping into?
Okay. So I'm going to give you the me answer, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of background. I have trained folks who are prophetesses. My client base is, for a time, was almost mostly Catholic, including nuns and priests. I work with everybody. I've worked with Buddhists. I've worked with folks all over the world. And frankly, the one thing I am certain is universal is the intuitive part. In other words, this third eye aspect of religion in general, it was never intended for us to cast that aside. At least that's not my personal belief. There's a lot of astrology in the Bible. I'm just saying. So I really don't believe that these two things are in conflict. As a matter of fact, I believe that most people that you see who are truly evolved in the religious sphere, no matter what the religion is, there is a great deal of intuitive work that comes with what they do and their journey. Most people know that. I think they just think human-wise, they're not capable of that. Anything that the Pope can have, we can have in our relationship with God. I'm not really sure why people convolute that. You don't need anybody else to get to God. That's why I'm here. And I can't help but think, especially in the era that we are currently going through, there is no more important time to be developing your intuition than right now. I can't stress that enough.
I agree. I'm glad that you said that, because I think a lot of people hold themselves back from fear, from whatever they were conditioned. I'm a whole heathen, so I don't know nothing about the Bible. I mean, I know there's Adam and Eve. I don't know. So
oh my God,
I'm grateful that I don't have to decondition myself before I learn. But I know that is something that holds some people back. So we're going to go bare bones. We're going to go to the basics. I'm going to ask you a few questions that might help newbies, beginners who are coming into the whole intuitive space. And maybe we'll get a little deeper depending on your answers.
Okay.
So question numero uno. Yes. What is intuition? We keep saying it. What does it mean?
I'm gonna say a sentence and then I'm gonna explain it. Intuition is the seat of the soul. It is the message from God that speaks directly to you, whether it is through your ears, your eyes, your senses, your skin, just a clear knowing. This is how God speaks to us. It's the warning, it's the message, it's the preemptive, it's the allowance of us to be able to have the free will to make and choose decisions, if only we would use it that way. Intuition is the baseline. And I fundamentally believe, like a lot of folks out there that teach like A Course in Miracles and things like that, I believe I'm the step before all of them. Even Deepak Chopra, I believe I'm the step before, because before you get into all of this healing work, developing a relationship with the voice or however that information comes in is pivotal. My spiritual journey changed dramatically when I developed my intuition. I was doing it before, but oh my God, the speed I could move with after was unbelievable. So in other words, for those of us who are in the self-development or just getting started, or you just started with your first therapist or whatever it may be, and you're going, oh my God, I just want to get it done. Develop your intuition. It moves faster. That's really what I'm telling you. See, there's the win.
So that's the benefit. That's one of the many benefits of intuition. So yes. When people say, oh, their intuition is just like the gut instinct, what do you say to that?
Carefully. That is correct, with a big giant asterisk next to it. And here's the asterisk. You absolutely have to know the difference between the voice and your ego. That's not an ego. So I'm going to give you the short answer is really just self-development. In other words, The more you develop the self, the more you understand your ego. This is why you see, you may be online and you see psychics, other psychics online, and they give an answer, and then it seems it veers off into a lot of opinion. That is because they've gathered, the information, and now they're adding on based on what they understand the world to be. That's not our job. Sorry.
Just the facts. Just the facts, ma'am.
Our job is the facts. Absolutely. Especially in a psychic reading. We actually convolute and complicate it, much like we do everything else, because we're humans. And we don't understand that that's our ego sometimes getting in the way. For example, if you are reading for somebody online and their husband is abusing them, naturally you want to say to them, girl, you in danger, get the hell out of the house, because that's what we do. Good common sense would tell you that. But at the same time, there's a message for them. There's a learning for them in that. And sometimes we're so busy in judgment, we don't allow the learning to come through. That's really our job. So separating those two things is hard for most people. And I don't think most people are aware of the fact that they're even in ego when they're reading. The easiest way to I'm going to say get ego out of the way is to really take a deep breath. It's the same way you connect in the first place. It's just about that reconnection every single time. So I tell people, count up to 8, count down to 8. And then you're going to clear your body, your mind, and your spirit so that you can hear, see, sense again effectively. But you also still have to know yourself in that process. And this is why the self-development part of the psychic ability is so pivotal, because when you're in the throes of that information, if you don't know your own triggers, very often you're going to veer down the road of ego, even if you're not trying. Does that make sense when I say that?
Absolutely. I always tell people to look at how it feels. Is it a tightening or is it feeling loose? Is it coming with thoughts of fear or thoughts of love? Does it get you closer to your ultimate goal or pull you away? And those are the ways you can kind of determine what's coming in is coming from your head and your logic mind trying to think through it, or if it's coming from source.
Yes.
So are there different ways that the information comes in for someone who is not a psychic, or reading for someone who's just a layperson who wants to develop their intuition? Does the information come in various ways?
Yes. In the early onset, it's going to come. So I'll speak through the senses. If you hear the information, it's called clairaudience, and that is actually my primary sense, or has been for some years. Clairvoyance is clear vision, being able to see, in other words. And the way people see and hear, when I say hear, a lot of the time people go, was it a voice outside of you? Is it a voice inside of you? Doesn't matter. Sometimes it sounds like it's right inside your head. And for me, the variance on whether it's inside or outside is whether I am in deep channel or whether I'm just kind of doing the psychic reading thing. So there is also, I'm trying to think of all the clairs, because I won't lie, I don't live in this world much.
Clairsentience?
Clairsentience, which is clear knowing.
Feeling.
Clear feeling. Actually, feeling has become one of my favorite, because I find everyone who shows up to me now is talking through feeling first. And it's important to know that is typically where the empath is going to come from. So a lot of the time, the empath feelings, that's what I hear in my head right now. Feelings, nothing more than feeling. It's, you go in the store, you feel everything. You have a cookout, you feel everything. Even at dinner sometimes, around your own family, you feel everything. You feel people's sadness, their joy, if they're depressed or anxious in particular. I think a lot of people in the world are bouncing off each other's anxiousness right now.
Totally.
That tends to be the first, I guess I want to say, cursory marker that you're going into your psychic abilities. Because if you can feel people's feelings, obviously you already have a sense that is moving you in the direction of, I have this connection to the people around me. And if you have a connection to humans, then you have a connection to spirit. You have a connection to source. It's as simple as that, because that's what we come from. So we're all interconnected in that way, whether you've passed on or not. Make sense?
Absolutely. So that now leads me to the question, because you hear a lot of people saying some people have a gift, some people don't. So does everybody have intuition they can tap into and use it?
Every single human being on earth.
Thank you.
Every single one has the ability to tap into intuition. Is it going to come out in the same way in everyone? No. And I mean no. There are so many more clairs that we haven't even named yet, not to mention a slew of other abilities. people show up to their healer self, if you will, or their angelic self, or, you know, depends on what religion you follow, how you call that out. But you show up in that way. Everybody's different. Everybody's experience is different. I found myself having to say that a lot in class in the early years, because a lot of people thought they were going to end up coming out and reading just like me. Like, I have a Leo rising. I'm animated as hell. Like, yeah, it's not going to happen. So you got to read like you. And that's the part where people struggle, because they're always looking for these very cookie cutter definitions of what it is, as opposed to allowing the knowing to come in. And just as Morpheus says, I love to say this in class, you know, I love this moment, believe. That's really what we're missing in this process. A lot of the time, the biggest barrier to psychic ability or any level of intuition is belief, because we are always questioning, is this real? Or did it actually happen? Yes, it did. Let me answer that for you all across the board. You don't even have to book a reading with me. Yes, this is a real thing. It's happening in whatever way it showed up. If it crossed your mind that that's grandma, or if it crossed your mind, I think somebody's trying to communicate with me in my sleep, they are. That's why the thought came in, because that's what it actually is. We're so used to questioning ourselves because school didn't really prepare us for this, and nor did church, frankly. So, and worse yet, I think a lot of us in church learned that this was bad or wrong, or, you know, especially depending on which generation you fall into. I think a lot of us think that this is still taboo. This is what God wants. I firmly believe that. What else are they doing over there that they would want to be this bored anyway? I mean, really, you just pass on to another and just forever? No, of course not. It's your grandmother. They want to help. Come on, people. We know this, and we know that when it's passed on loved ones in particular, because we know who we were dealing with. So of course, on a soul level, they're going to want to help any way they can. And that, I actually think mediumship is the acceptance point for most people in this ability, because that's how they get it, is a passed on loved one starts to show up and they go, okay, maybe this is real, because the sign, they'll show them, you know, whatever it is that they connected on, whether it's butterflies or pennies on the ground or, you know, something, they're going to tell you, this is real, dude, I'm here, you know, like, this is real, I want to connect with you. So it's important for us to just believe.
That is something that led me to actually finding you. Was I had a mediumship session with someone else, and she channeled my brother, and it was so, I mean, it was just so powerful. She was calling me the nickname he called me. It was just wild. And it was my first ever encounter with something like that. And I was like, okay, I believe it. And she was like, yeah, by the way, you're psychic, you know, stop fucking around, basically. And I was like, oh, so all these, and I don't know what it was, but a flood of all these memories started to come forward of things that happened when I was younger, all these, you know, psychic experiences, prophetic dreams. Yeah. That's what led me shortly after to you to say, like, okay, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm still just, you know, making this up. And Ahsaki is the one who's just like, y'all, you're not crazy. You're just psychic. Now let me show you how this works.
Oh my gosh. It's literally, you know, I'm literally looking at the magnet that one of I think she may have, I don't know if she was in class with you, but Fawn made for me, one of my artist students who came out of ID1, Intuitive Development. And sure enough, it says, you're not crazy, you're just psychic, because most of us think we're nuts when this starts. We do. We think, even kids now, you know, and initially when they start to, because what I think most of us are thinking we're nuts for, we're worried about what everybody else's reaction is going to be. We fundamentally know that it's real, but we're struggling with, how do I tell any other human without looking like Boo Boo the Fool, you know, or sounding like, really?
Exactly. At the fear of judgment. I feel like there's so many people. And I also feel like there's probably so many people who are profoundly psychic and have so many different abilities that are probably locked up in a loony bin because their family and friends didn't know what to do with them, or, you know, how to help and guide them. Yes. Which is why it's extra important for people like you to come and help guide those souls towards using their powers for good.
Yeah. Yeah. I read an article, I've actually read it a couple of times, about a shaman's experience walking through a mental health hospital. And what he sees walking through a mental health hospital is, you know, something very different from what, you know, a typical clinician would see. I often chuckle because I came from the world of clinical social work and moved into this. And I tell people all the time, we are just two ends of the same stick. We just don't understand that part yet. Psychics understand it. I don't think the therapists get that part yet, but we really are playing in the same arena. I mean, any day of the week, I talk to dead people all day. I could be schizophrenic. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that I could DSM-5 myself. I just happen to know how to present this information, and I understand it, and, you know, found all the right guideposts to kind of move me through where I needed to be. But I can see how a lot of people could end up in, even now, in circumstances, because we're so big on medication, where you're being forced or told I'm this and I'm that. And I mean, I've heard people argue it. I actually have friends in the holistic community who've had horrendous experiences when they were younger being committed. True story. Horrible. More than one, in fact. It just, you know, it like baffles the mind, but I think because my mother really kind of fostered this thing, you know, and kind of allowed me to explore and do my own thing. So I was really blessed in that department. Probably why I am in this place, you know, teaching already, because I had the freedom to explore and figure it out, and, you know, without the shame or the degradation or the sense that I was going insane. Nobody ever thought that of me. So, or if they did, they didn't tell me, at least. And I appreciate that. Thanks, whoever didn't share it. Anyway.
That is a blessing. I know that I had experiences early on that made me think like, oh, this is scary. This is bad. It makes mommy worry. So let me keep this to myself. And then it's like, It just went away until recently. So are there any resources or anything that you would suggest for people, or if not resources, things that they should do in their day-to-day to help them developing their intuition and moving towards this path?
If you go to Ahsaki Kai on YouTube, you will find a 3-minute video on the breath. It is literally the easiest way to connect. We way overcomplicate like meditation and breathing. Like, I don't have an hour and blah, blah. And you don't have to do any of that. I promise, I swear. Just sit still in a room. Add ritual to it simply because it allows the ambiance of, you know what I mean, the energy and the atmosphere. Light a candle. Go to YouTube, turn on some solfeggios. Wait, that's 2 things on YouTube. So, okay, maybe one with the phone and one with a tablet. Turn on some solfeggios, then turn on my video for the 3 deep breaths. It's super quick. And if you have a question, ask it to yourself. And I'm really saying ask it to your higher self at that time, during the time that you're doing the deep breaths, right at the end of those deep breaths, you're going to get an answer. Your only job, like I said earlier, is then to believe. This is where the tricky part comes in. The second you get an answer from source, you're going to refute it. Ta-da! There's your brain, folks. This is what we do. This is just what we do. And it's okay until you learn to develop your way around those things. And that is all about the development of the self, because you have to understand where your ego would come in, or why your ego would come in and tell you that's not possible, or no, that's not right. I have people do that to me in readings all the time. Oh, I can't see that. It's literally my favorite thing to hear, because I'm thinking, okay, first of all, you paid me, right? For like a whole hour.
I'm the one who could see it.
Right. And I'm like, you paid me to see for you. You can't see, but that's not why we're here, for you to see. You want me to see, right? But they're like, no, I can't see that. You know, and it's okay. They're in their brain. So their mind is saying, no, that's not real. You know, that's not a thing. And they can't, if they can't see the nuggets, you know, that are already leading to it, then they've already pushed it away. This is how we actually create not manifesting. This is how we stop the manifestation from happening, because we're always doing this and going, no, that's not showing up the way I thought it was, or that's not the picture that I thought it was going to be. So we're questioning it immediately. Anyway, so I say all of that to say, as soon as you get the answer, best thing to do, write it down. You uncomplicate the process if you just take yourself out of it and write whatever you hear. It doesn't matter if it's insane. It doesn't matter how it sounds to you. Listen, I've had downloads for myself from about Dwayne Johnson, Oprah Winfrey. Does it sound nuts? Sure. Is it likely to happen? Yep. As long as I just put it in the journal and leave it be, it probably will.
My Oprah journal thing came true. Yours are going to come true too.
Okay. And you know what? I believe you. I believe you when you tell me that.
See,
but that's really how it works.
See, she's walking the talk there, folks.
Believe. You got to believe. Absolutely. This is really where, I mean, I'm really just giving you the core curriculum to, this is how you actually get to your intuition. Breathe. Use tools around you if you need them. Crystals, stones, a bowl of water, which might sound a little hokey, but putting a bowl of water is always carrying and moving energy, and it never really stops movement, even if it's sitting in a bowl completely still. It's always in motion. So again, that allows the flow of energy to come towards you. Ask out loud if necessary, but if you live in a house full of people, I know we're still a little halfway on quarantine, so I know if people are going to be outside the door like, honey, are you okay? Say it to yourself in your mind.
Just talking to my
They
guy.
hear you either way, right? Exactly. Now, in my house, mind you, I talk to my guides all day. My dad's walking by, it's 4 a.m., we're doing the refrigerator run. He's looking at me, having a whole conversation. And it's like, whatever, he just keeps it moving. So they're used to me doing that. But yeah, for everyone else, if you need to say it to yourself, but make your guidance system, whoever it is you want to talk to, whether that's Jesus, Mother Mary Magdalene,
any of the angels, loved one, any ancestor.
Absolutely. Anybody you want to. And with reckless abandon, I would say. I mean, if you're Christian, why would Jesus not speak to you? Hello. I've had it happen in class with people with the first day. They're like, oh, yeah. I mean, really, where everybody had to stop. We boo-hooed for like 20 minutes. Yeah, all the time. It happens. So why would they not come to speak? This is a time in our lives where the veil no longer exists.
What's the veil?
The veil, right. Okay, let me explain that. Think of it as a curtain. If you were sitting in an audience and you're about to see a show, before the show comes on, the curtain rises. Well, there is a curtain between us and the outer realm. So the spiritual world, meaning our passed on loved ones, the archangels, God himself, everything else that, is the universe around us. There was a veil. The veil is gone. And I mean that literally. The veil has now disappeared. It is no longer even a thing. It doesn't exist. They're here with us always. They're here all the time. That's why so many more people are saying, I feel like my grandmother's here. I feel like I'm talking to my mom or my sister, whatever family member, because they are. And it's happening more and more and more. We're moving towards an enlightened age, obviously. I think most of us know that by now. Probably most of your listeners know that for sure. And within that, our ability to do things that are considered esoteric or spiritual or uniquely magical, if you will, are going to become way more common, including mediumship, psychic ability. We're all going to have this in short time. And I'm not talking decades from now, folks. It won't take that long.
I love that. That's actually something that I'm noticing. It seems like a lot of people are coming either in new interest in these esoteric things or coming out of the closet about having a spiritual practice or being psychic, having certain clairs very strongly. And I'm also seeing kind of a pushback towards it for people thinking it might be, a fad or just the hot new thing and people are just playing around with. Are there any things like that? Any other myths like that? It's just a fad, or any other myths that you'd like to dispel about psychics or anyone doing this work?
I think because of we're in an era where I think a lot of people can see, people are asking themselves, are we in Armageddon? Is this because the signs are out there and people are going, what is this that we're actually experiencing this current moment in history? And because of that, people are looking to what they know. So anything that appears otherwise seems like a threat to some folks. In other words, the crows are already dying, the rivers are already running. I'm being dramatic for flair, but, if folks are already thinking along those lines, then the psychics are here, they're heretics, they're trying to it's this very dramatic kind of thinking that we too are a sign of Armageddon. No, I think we're exactly the opposite, to be perfectly frank. We need this more than we've ever needed anything else. And if we're not, in particular in this era where we've literally, gone in the house and we didn't have the option to even go to church, I can't think intuition would matter more than right now. I really just can't think of a time where it would matter more, because you can't go to your house of worship all the time. That may not be an option for everyone. So sometimes you're going to have church at home with just you. And that's
wherever you're at.
Hello. So in order to have that church, you're going to need some sort of experience with actually having a talk with God. That's what intuition is.
I think that it's great. Well, let me not say it that way. This whole lockdown and quarantine situation that we're in with COVID now has been horrific and has had horrific results. However, when you look underneath that layer, there's so many good things happening. And one of them, I think, is the personal power that people are experiencing with doing just as you said, having church, a solo church. It's me and God, me and whatever it is that I believe in. And I think that is one of the great things caused by the slowing down from COVID.
Yes.
I think
COVID itself and the suffering is the 3D aspect. That's the very human part. On a soul level, we're having a cleansing without question. I mean, basically the world came to a grinding halt for at least a couple of weeks. And during that time, rivers were running differently, water was clearing itself. So obviously there is a much higher vibrating meaning to all of these things occurring. When you lose a loved one, no one cares about the higher, that just doesn't matter in those sentences. And I'm very, very aware of those factors. My job is really to speak to both. I have my feet in both, but to still speak to the spiritual aspects of it. And that's really what's happening to all of us. We are going through, I kiddingly posted, but I wasn't kidding. We're all Neo. We just got unplugged from the Matrix. None of us know what to do. Remember when Neo first came out, he came out of that goo thing and they pull the thing out of his throat and he's like, and he's breathing all hard and he's like, where am I? Welcome, everyone. This is what we're doing right now. We just came out of the Matrix. Most of us don't even realize that yet. And we're still we're scrambling to try to get back in because we don't understand that that's actually freedom. It's okay. We'll get there. We're all going to help.
Bit by bit. Every time something like this happens, more people awaken.
Yep.
And some people kind of peek one eye out. No, I'm going to go back to bed and close their eye again. But some people open both eyes and they run forward. They're ready.
Yeah.
So I think the people who listen here are either peeking or are ready.
Yes.
To kind of move forward towards that, which is why I really wanted to have you on. So what do you do with your students as an intuition teacher? And where can my listeners find you?
Go to ahsakikai.com. Should I spell it?
I'll have it in the show notes for you guys.
Okay. Go to ahsakikai.com. Everything from readings, intuitive coaching, whether you want to work with me privately or you want to take coursework with me, all on my website. Everything is there for you to be able to access. Classes, I know for a fact, will not start again until roughly mid-June. And private coaching is going on now. I do have openings for new private clients, which I haven't done in quite some time because they're usually a little long-term. Anywho, so private coaching, personal coaching. I do work with families. I do work with couples. That is something you want to reach out to me for if you are wanting me to work with multiple people at once, but I certainly have, and I will again. But yeah, everything is on my website. One place, you can always find me on Facebook if you're, by messenger or by friending me in general. And if you're already a friend of Danny's, obviously I will know that, we want to talk to them.
You guys, I don't recommend people very often. However, I love Ahsaki. I learned from her as a student, and I've gotten readings from her, which are all very accurate. I sent my mama to her, y'all. That's how you know that you trust somebody, is if you send your mama to them. And my mom is still coming to me every random time like, Dan, you know what your friend Ahsaki said? Guess what? It came true. I'm like, yeah, Mom, I know. Of course it did.
Oh, man. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. That's actually how I know. That was actually one of my validation points. Realizing how many people brought me their daughters, their kids, or their parents. And I'm like, okay, I know me. I'm like, there's only a few people I'm taking my kids to for hypno, or something like that. So I'm like, okay, that tells me, I think I'm good at this. All right. Find what you're good at and rock with it. So I did.
There it is. Is there any last words you want to leave the listeners with before we head out?
I think I'll reiterate that point that I've probably made 2 or 3 times already. There is no more important time in our history, literally, I mean that, to develop your third eye, to develop your intuition, to develop your relationship with self. we're not going to be able to rely on the people around us to give us information at a certain point. We're going to have to rely on our intuition. We won't have any other resources. You can kind of see that peeling out now.
You heard it here first. Get cracking, y'all. If you need help, call Ahsaki. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will be back next week with another amazing guest. And have a great week. Stay safe. Stay healthy, y'all. Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, you made it to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this, I would love it if you'd subscribe and share with a friend who might dig this content too. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for links to everything mentioned in this episode, and feel free to visit DannyFaust.com for more. Bye. Bye. Bye.